The big spaceships of the Vorthok Empire came down from the dark sky like metal monsters. The ships were huge and black with red lights that blinked like angry eyes. Commander Vextar stood on the bridge of his warship looking down at the human research station on planet Kepler 442b. The place looked empty and quiet, just like all the other human colonies they had taken over. The Vorthok were tall lizard-like creatures with green scaly skin and yellow eyes that could see in the dark. They had sharp teeth and long claws that could cut through metal. Their empire had taken over 12 different star systems without losing even one soldier. They were proud of being the strongest fighters in the galaxy. Every other alien race was scared of them. 3 months ago, the humans had run away when they saw the Vorthok ships coming. The cowards had left everything behind and escaped to other planets. Commander Vextar smiled, showing his sharp teeth. He liked it when enemies ran away without fighting. It made taking over their worlds much easier. But Commander Vextar did not know about Dr. Kim Tae-woo. The old human scientist had stayed behind when everyone else left. He was 70 years old with gray hair and wrinkled hands, but his mind was still very smart. Dr. Tae-woo worked in the quantum laboratory deep under the research station. He had been working on a secret project that could help humans fight back against the aliens. Dr. Tae-woo knew he was going to die soon. The radiation from his quantum experiments was making him very sick, but he did not care. He wanted to finish his work before the aliens found him. The quantum field generator hummed loudly as it created strange energy that bent space and time. Dr. Tae-woo had discovered something amazing about human consciousness and death, but he had no time left to tell anyone. The Vorthok soldiers marched through the empty hallways of the research station. Their heavy boots made loud sounds on the metal floors. Sergeant Krelvon led a squad of 12 soldiers, checking every room for anything useful. The aliens were looking for human technology they could steal and human weapons they could study private. Zoktel was young for a Vorthok soldier, only 25 years old. In human time, he had joined the army to see the galaxy and fight brave enemies, but so far every world they visited was empty. The humans always ran away before any real fighting could happen. Zoktel was starting to think humans were just weak creatures who could not fight. The first strange thing happened in the main laboratory. Trooper Hexmar was checking the computer systems when his plasma rifle stopped working. The weapon made weird beeping sounds and then went completely dead. Hexmar shook the rifle and pressed all the buttons, but nothing happened. He told Sergeant Krelvon about the problem, but the sergeant just said it was probably human interference. Then the temperature reading started going crazy. Private Gulven noticed that his suit sensors showed the air getting very cold in some places but warm in others. The temperature would drop 20 degrees in just a few seconds and then go back to normal. There was no reason for this to happen. The station's heating system was turned off and there was no wind inside the building. Dr. Tae-woo was dying in his laboratory 3 floors below the main level. The quantum field had changed his body in ways science could not explain. His consciousness was starting to separate from his physical form, floating between the normal world and strange quantum dimensions. As his body got weaker, his mind became stronger and more aware. Late in the afternoon, Private Zoktel saw something that made his scales turn pale. He was walking down corridor 7 when he saw a tall, thin figure standing at the far end. The figure wore a white coat that seemed to glow with soft light. The man had gray hair and kind eyes, but there was something wrong about him. Zoktel blinked hard, and when he opened his eyes, the figure was gone. Zoktel tried to call Sergeant Krelvon on his radio, but only static came out. He ran down the corridor to where the figure had been standing, but found nothing. The air felt cold and strange, like something invisible was watching him. Zoktel had never been scared before, but now his hands were shaking. More soldiers started reporting weird things. Doors would open by themselves with no one touching them. Computer screens turned on even though they had no power source. Footsteps echoed in empty rooms, but when soldiers went to check, they found nothing. Tools and equipment moved around when no one was looking, making soft scraping sounds on the floors. Dr. Tae-woo consciousness was learning how to exist in his new quantum state. He could see through walls and hear conversations from far away. He watched the alien soldiers searching his station and felt angry that they were touching human things. The aliens were strong and had good weapons, but they did not understand what they were dealing with. Commander Vex Tar received reports from his soldiers about equipment failures and strange sightings. He dismissed most of the reports as stress from being in an empty human facility. The commander had been a soldier for 40 years and had seen many things, but he did not believe in ghosts or spirits. Only weak-minded creatures believed in such nonsense, but even Commander Vextar started to feel uneasy when night came to the planet. The research station became very quiet and dark, except for the red glow from Vorthak equipment. The alien soldiers gathered in the main cafeteria because they did not want to be alone in the empty corridors. They were supposed to be the most feared warriors in the galaxy, but something about this place made them nervous. Dr. Tewu's spirit grew stronger as his body finally died in the quantum laboratory. His consciousness expanded into the strange energy fields that surrounded the station. He could feel every alien soldier and sense their fear growing. He had become something new, something that had never existed before in the universe. The quantum field had not just preserved Dr. Tewu's mind, it had enhanced it and connected it to dimensions beyond normal space. He could affect electronic equipment by thinking about it. He could appear as a visible figure or remain completely invisible. He could move through solid walls and travel instantly from one place to another. As the first night passed, Dr. Tewu began to understand his new abilities. The aliens who thought they were so strong and scary were actually afraid of things they could not explain. Their weapons were useless against something that was already dead. Their science could not detect something that existed between dimensions. The Vorthak soldiers huddled together in the cafeteria, talking in whispers about the strange things they had seen. None of them wanted to admit they were scared, but their body language showed the truth. Their scales had turned pale colors, and they kept looking over their shoulders as if expecting to see something terrible. Dr. Tewu watched them from the quantum realm and felt a grim satisfaction. These aliens had destroyed human colonies and killed innocent people. Now they would learn that some things were worse than death. They would discover that humans did not give up even after dying. The real fight was just beginning. Admiral Morgoth was not happy when he read the reports from Kepler 442b. The messages from Commander Vextar talked about equipment failures and nervous soldiers, but Admiral Morgoth had conquered 50 worlds and he knew what real problems looked like. These sounded like excuses from weak troops who were scared of empty buildings. The Admiral was a huge Vorthak with dark green scales and scars from many battles. He had never lost a fight in his entire life. His yellow eyes glowed with anger as he read about plasma rifles that stopped working and soldiers who jumped at shadows. This was not how the mighty Vorthak Empire behaved. Admiral Morgoth decided to send his best troops to solve the problem. The Shadow Guard were elite soldiers who had never known defeat. They wore black armor and carried the most advanced weapons in the galaxy. Each Shadow Guard warrior had killed at least 100 enemies in battle. They did not believe in fear or weakness. Captain Vexlar led 20 Shadow Guard soldiers to the research station. He was confident that he would find nothing more than cowardly regular troops who had let their imagination run wild. Captain Vexlar had fought against the fierce Zephyrian warriors and the deadly crystalline soldiers. A few equipment malfunctions on an empty human station would not scare him, but when Captain Vexlar arrived at the station, he found something he had never seen before. The regular Vorthak soldiers were all gathered in the main cafeteria, refusing to patrol the corridors alone. Sergeant Krell Vaughn had always been a brave warrior, but now his scales were pale gray, and his hands shook when he held his weapon. Sergeant Krell Vaughn tried to explain what was happening, but his words sounded crazy. He talked about doors that opened by themselves and equipment that worked without power. He described seeing human figures that disappeared when you looked directly at them. The worst part was the feeling of being watched by invisible eyes that followed you everywhere. Captain Vexlar did not believe these stories until he experienced something himself. On his first night at the station, he was walking through the science laboratory when all the computer screens suddenly turned on. The screens showed security camera footage of empty corridors, but in the footage there were translucent human figures walking through the walls. The timestamp on the footage showed it was happening right now in real time, but when Captain Vexlar looked at the actual corridors with his own eyes, he saw nothing. The cameras were detecting something that was invisible to normal sight, something that could walk through solid metal walls like they were made of air. Dr. Tewu had been Busy during the 3 days since his death, his quantum-enhanced consciousness had discovered something amazing. He was not alone in this strange new existence. There were other human spirits scattered across the galaxy wherever the Vorthak had killed people. These ghosts were confused and lost, but Dr. Tae-woo could reach out to them. The first spirit he contacted was Lee Min-ho, a young Marine who had died defending the Tau Ceti colony 3 months ago. Lee Min-ho had been 28 years old when Vorthak soldiers shot him down as he tried to protect human civilians. His anger and hatred burned bright in the quantum field, making his spirit very strong. Next, Dr. Tae-woo found Park So-young, a ship engineer who had died when her transport vessel was destroyed. The 32-year-old woman had been trying to evacuate human families when the Vorthak attacked. Her protective instincts kept her spirit tied to the physical world even after death. She wanted to keep helping humans escape from danger. One by one, Dr. Tae-woo reached out to these lost souls and taught them how to use their new abilities. He showed them how to appear visible to living beings and how to affect electronic equipment. The network of human ghosts began to grow as more spirits learned to work together. Captain Vexlar tried to access the station's main computer to understand what was causing the strange readings. But when he touched the interface, something incredible happened. The screen flickered and showed impossible images. Security cameras that had been turned off for months suddenly displayed footage of the corridors in the footage. Translucent human figures walked through the walls. Their faces were sad but determined, and they moved with purpose through areas where no living human had been for weeks. The timestamp showed the recording was happening right now, but the motion sensors detected no physical presence in those locations. Then words began appearing on the computer screen. As if written by an invisible hand, the letters formed slowly in perfect Vorthak language, spelling out a message that made Captain Vexlar step backward in shock. The message said, "Leave now or join us in death." The words appeared to be written in frost that spread across the screen, making the temperature drop 20 degrees in seconds. Captain Vexlar could see his breath in the suddenly cold air. His advanced armor should have protected him from temperature changes, but something was affecting the environment in ways that his technology could not understand. The frost on the screen formed patterns that looked like human faces, all staring directly at him. That same night, the first Vorthak soldier disappeared completely. Trooper Gex Min had been standing guard at the main entrance when his squad heard a terrible scream that cut off suddenly. When they ran to help him, they found only his plasma rifle on the ground, still warm from recent use, but no sign of Gex Min anywhere. The security cameras showed something that terrified even the brave Shadow Guard soldiers. The footage revealed Gex Min standing at his post when suddenly he just vanished. He did not run away or fall down or get pulled somewhere else. He simply disappeared in the middle of taking a step, as if something had pulled him into another dimension. Captain Vexlar searched every room in the station but found no trace of the missing soldier. There was no blood, no signs of struggle, and no way for anyone to have removed the body without being seen by cameras. The only explanation was that Gex Min had been taken somewhere that normal eyes could not see. Remaining Vorthak forces began to understand that they were not fighting human technology or military tactics. They were facing something completely outside their understanding, something that their science could not explain and their weapons could not touch. The mighty warriors who had conquered star systems started to feel real fear for the first time. Dr. Tae-woo and his growing network of human spirits watched the aliens panic with grim satisfaction. These Vorthak soldiers had killed innocent humans and destroyed peaceful colonies. Now they would learn what it felt like to be helpless and afraid. The dead humans had all the time in the universe to make their enemies suffer. The quantum realm allowed the human ghosts to move instantly between locations and affect the physical world in ways that seemed impossible. They could appear and disappear at will, walk through any barrier, and influence electronic systems just by thinking about them. The aliens' advanced technology was useless against enemies who existed between dimensions. As more reports of missing soldiers reached Admiral Morgoth, he began to realize that something serious was happening on Kepler 442b. This was not equipment failure or soldier nervousness. This was something new and dangerous that threatened the entire Vorthak military campaign. The empire that had never known defeat was about to face their greatest challenge. Admiral Morgoth was getting desperate. He sent his third wave of ships to Kepler 442b, but this time he included quantum scientists and reality stabilizer machines. The Vorthak Empire had the best technology in the galaxy, and Admiral Morgoth believed that science could solve any problem, even strange ones like disappearing soldiers. Dr. Vex Cole was the Empire's top quantum physicist. He had studied dimensional anomalies for 30 years and thought he understood everything about space and time. But when he arrived at the Human Research Station, he found readings that made no sense at all. His instruments detected consciousness existing in multiple dimensions at the same time. Dr. Wu had been very busy building his network of human spirits. The old scientist had found dozens of other ghosts scattered across the star systems where humans had died fighting the Vorthak. Each spirit brought their own skills and knowledge from when they were alive, and Dr. Taewu was learning how to coordinate their abilities. The network now included Choi Dong-min, a former intelligence officer who had died when the Vorthak attacked the Sol Space Station. Choi Dong-min had been an expert at breaking into computer systems and stealing information. When he became a ghost, his spirit could pass through quantum barriers and access any electronic device instantly. As a living person, Choi Dong-min had needed special equipment and hours of work to hack into alien computers, but as a quantum spirit he could simply think himself into any computer system and read all the data inside. The Vorthak had no way to protect their information from an enemy who could walk through their firewalls like they were made of air. Choi Dong-min began turning every Vorthak communication into a security problem. Messages that should have reached their destinations arrived completely changed. Coordinates that were supposed to guide ships to safe locations instead led them into dangerous asteroid fields. Secret battle plans appeared on public channels where human resistance fighters could read them. The Vorthak military commanders started receiving orders they had never been given. Reports from the field contained information that made no sense at all. Admiral Morgoth tried to send reinforcements to 3 different star systems, but the ships received navigation data that sent them to empty spacelight years away from their target spark. Ji-hoon had been a combat pilot before his death in the Battle of Proxima. He was only 26 years old when Vorthak fighters shot down his ship, but he had been one of humanity's best pilots. Park Ji-hoon loved flying more than anything else in the universe, and death had not changed that passion. As a ghost, Park Ji-hoon discovered he could create a phantom version of his old fighter craft. The spectral ship appeared on Vorthak scanners as a real threat, but weapons fire passed right through it without causing any damage. Park Ji-hoon's ghost fighter could appear anywhere instantly and confuse enemy pilots during important battles. When Vorthak fleet movements tried to attack human colonies, Park Ji-hoon would materialize his phantom fighter right in the middle of their formations. The alien pilots would panic and start shooting at a target that was not really there. Real missiles exploded where no ship existed, and Vorthak fighters crashed into each other trying to avoid an enemy that was already dead. Dr. Yoon-hae Jin had been a psychological warfare specialist. When she was alive, she understood how fear worked and how to use it as a weapon against enemies. Dr. Yoon-hae Jin had studied Vorthak culture for years and knew exactly what scared the reptilian aliens the most. The Vorthak were afraid of small creatures that could get inside their armor and equipment. Dr. Yoon-hae Jin taught the other ghosts how to create phantom insects that would appear in Vorthak environmental suits. The soldiers would feel bugs crawling on their skin and see them on their suit sensors, but they could never remove or kill the creatures because they were not really there. Vorthak soldiers began tearing off their armor in panic, trying to escape from insects that existed only in the quantum realm. Some warriors refused to put their suits back on and became vulnerable to the cold vacuum of space. Others scratched their scales raw, trying to remove bugs that their instruments said were there, but their hands could not touch. The psychological attacks grew more sophisticated as the human spirits learned to work together. Dr. Yoon-hae Jin discovered that Vorthak culture had ancient superstitions about the dead coming back to punish the living. The reptilian aliens had forgotten these old beliefs, but the fears were still buried deep in their genetic memory. The ghosts began appearing to Vorthak soldiers in forms that triggered these ancestral terrors. Translucent figures with glowing eyes would materialize in the darkness. speaking ancient Vorthak words that had not been heard for thousands of years. The aliens found themselves paralyzed by fears they did not understand coming from the deepest parts of their reptilian brains on the forge world of Vorthak Prime Admiral. Morgoth faced growing rebellion among his officers. Battle-hardened veterans who had never shown fear were refusing to deploy to human space systems. Entire garrisons abandoned their posts rather than face another night of ghostly visitations. The Empire's expansion had completely stopped 3 Vorthak dreadnoughts. The most powerful ships in their fleet reported total system failures while trying to enter the Sol system. Every computer core on all 3 ships displayed the same message, simultaneously written in ancient Vorthak script that said, "The dead remember, and the dead do not forgive the dreadnought." Crews evacuated immediately, leaving behind ships worth billions of credits rather than stay aboard vessels that had become floating haunted houses. The mighty warships drifted helplessly in space as their crews fled in escape pods too, terrified to remain on ships that were controlled by invisible enemies. Dr. Tae-woo felt his consciousness expanding through the quantum field as more human spirits joined his network. Each death in the war against the Vorthak added another ghost to his growing army. Every new spirit brought fresh knowledge about how to terrify and confuse their living enemies. The quantum physicist realized that human consciousness was more adaptable than anyone had imagined when freed from physical bodies. Human minds could evolve rapidly and develop abilities that seemed impossible. The dead were becoming something new and powerful while the living Vorthak remained trapped by their limited understanding. From his position in the quantum realm, Dr. Tae-woo could see the entire war unfolding across multiple star systems. Human resistance fighters were winning battles they should have lost because ghost intelligence gave them perfect knowledge of enemy positions. The tide of the war was turning as the dead fought alongside the living. The Vorthak Empire, which had built its reputation on inspiring fear in other species, was learning what true terror felt like. The hunters had become the hunted and the predators were now the prey. The aliens who thought they understood warfare were facing an enemy that rewrote all the rules of combat. Every night brought new reports of Vorthak soldiers disappearing or going insane from encounters with human ghosts. The reptilian warriors who had once conquered star systems now huddled together in groups, afraid to venture into dark corridors or empty rooms. The psychological damage was spreading through their entire military like a plague. Admiral Morgoth realized that his empire faced a threat unlike anything in galactic history. They were not just fighting living humans anymore, but the accumulated rage and determination of every human who had died in the war. The dead outnumbered the living, and they had nothing left to lose. General Kim Seung-ho sat in the underground command bunker of New Seoul reading battle reports that made no sense at all. 3 weeks ago, the Human Defense Force had been losing the war badly. The Vorthak Empire was advancing on all fronts and human colonies were falling one after another, but suddenly everything had changed. The Vorthak advance had stopped completely. Enemy forces were retreating from star systems. They had just conquered. Alien commanders were sending confused messages about equipment failures and missing soldiers. General Kim Seung-ho had been a military leader for 20 years, but he had never seen anything like this before. The first ghost contact came during a strategy meeting in the deepest part of the bunker. General Kim Seung-ho was discussing evacuation plans with his staff when the temperature in the room dropped 15 degrees in just a few seconds. Frost began forming on the metal walls, and everyone could see their breath in the suddenly cold air. Then words appeared on the main display screen, written in what looked like ice crystals. The message said, "General Kim, this is Commander Yang Yoon-soo. I have intelligence about Vorthak fleet positions." The letters formed slowly as if an invisible hand was writing them, and the screen crackled with strange energy. Commander Yang Yoon-soo had died 6 months earlier when her cruiser was destroyed defending Earth's outer colonies. She had been one of the Human Defense Force's best tactical officers. But General Kim Seung-ho had watched her ship explode on the battle screen. There was no way she could be alive, but the ghost of Commander Yang Yoon-soo began providing detailed information about Vorthak military movements. The Phantom officer knew exactly where every enemy ship was located and what their patrol schedules looked like. She had intelligence that no living human could have gathered about alien bases and supply routes. Dr. On Jae-sung was the Defense Force's chief scientist, and He tried desperately to understand what was happening. His quantum field detectors were going crazy, showing readings that suggested consciousness existing in multiple dimensions at the same time. The implications were incredible and terrifying. According to Dr. An Jae-sung's instruments, human beings were not just surviving death but evolving into something completely new. The quantum signatures showed that human consciousness could exist independently from physical bodies and develop abilities that violated known laws of physics. The breakthrough came when Lieutenant Nam Yu Jin discovered she could modify quantum transmitters to receive ghost communications. The young communications officer had been experimenting with different frequencies when she accidentally tuned into phantom signals that were broadcasting on impossible wavelength. The first successful two-way conversation occurred when General Kim Sung-ho spoke directly with the spirit of Admiral Lee Kwan-soo, who had commanded Earth's Second Fleet. Before his death, Admiral Lee Kwan-soo had been General Kim Sung-ho's mentor and friend, but he had died 3 months ago defending the Mars colonies. Admiral Lee Kwan-soo's ghost brought tactical knowledge that revolutionized human resistance strategies. The Phantom Admiral had spent months studying Vorthak weaknesses while existing in the quantum realm. He knew things about alien psychology and technology that living humans had never discovered. The most important revelation was that the Vorthak were completely helpless against anything they could not explain scientifically. The reptilian aliens had built their entire culture around logic and understanding. If they encountered something that their science could not analyze, they became paralyzed with fear. Admiral Lee Kwan-soo suggested coordinated attacks, where ghost forces would infiltrate Vorthak positions hours before human troops arrived. The spirits could disable equipment, spread panic, and gather intelligence while remaining completely invisible to alien detection systems. The first joint operation took place on Kepler 186F, where Captain Song Mi-rae led a commando raid against a heavily defended Vorthak supply depot. The mission should have been impossible because the aliens had 3 times as many soldiers and superior weapons, but Captain Song Mi-rae had help from the dead. The ghosts of fallen Marines infiltrated the Vorthak base 6 hours before the attack. Human spirits walked through walls and disabled security systems, while Vorthak guards saw nothing unusual. The Phantom soldiers created cold spots that made alien equipment malfunction and caused inexplicable power failures throughout the facility. When Captain Song Mi-rae's living troops arrived, they found demoralized aliens shooting at shadows and fleeing from empty corridors. The Vorthak soldiers were so terrified and confused that they offered little resistance. The supply depot that should have taken days to capture fell in just 2 hours. Similar joint operations succeeded across human space as living and dead humans learned to work together. The ghosts provided perfect intelligence and psychological warfare, while living troops exploited the chaos. The partnership proved devastatingly effective against an enemy that could not fight what they could not see. Dr. An Jae-sung documented hundreds of confirmed ghost manifestations, each displaying unique abilities based on their skills when they were alive. Engineers who had died could manipulate technology through quantum fields, while scientists contributed to research projects by accessing information from dimensions beyond normal space. The spirits of former intelligence officers could hack into any Vorthak computer system instantly. Phantom pilots could create spectral fighter craft that confused enemy formations. Dead soldiers could scout enemy positions without risk of capture or death, because they were already beyond physical harm. Not every aspect of working with ghosts was positive. Some human spirits retained negative emotions from their deaths and wanted revenge against all aliens, not just the Vorthak. The ghost of Colonel Baek Jong-soo had to be contained by other spirits after his vengeful manifestations threatened civilian populations on mixed-species worlds. General Kim Sung-ho realized that humanity had gained the ultimate military advantage. The living could be killed, captured, or defeated, but the dead had infinite time and patience to pursue their goals. Human ghosts could follow enemies across the galaxy and strike at them in places where no living soldier could reach. The Vorthak military doctrine completely collapsed when faced with enemies who could not be killed because they were already dead. Their weapons passed harmlessly through phantom targets. Their armor provided no protection against spectral infiltration. Their fearsome reputation meant nothing to beings who had already faced the ultimate fear for the first Time in their expansionist history, the Vorthak found themselves losing a war they could not understand. They were fighting an enemy that grew stronger with every human death because each casualty became a new soldier in the ghostly army. The psychological impact on Vorthak forces was devastating. Soldiers who had conquered dozens of worlds were now afraid to enter dark rooms or walk down empty corridors. The reptilian warriors jumped at shadows and shot at targets that were not really there. Reports flooded into Vorthak High Command, describing impossible encounters with transparent humans who spoke perfect alien languages and knew military secrets that no living enemy should possess. The empire that had terrorized the galaxy was learning what it felt like to be hunted by an unstoppable force. General Kim Sung-ho watched the tide of war turn as human resistance forces went on the offensive. Planets that had been under Vorthak occupation for months were suddenly liberated as alien garrisons fled rather than face another night of ghostly visitations. The partnership between living and dead humans had created something unprecedented in galactic history, an army that could not be defeated because half of its soldiers were already beyond death, an intelligence network that spanned dimensions and could gather information that no conventional spy could obtain. As human forces advanced across former Vorthak territory, they were guided by the spirits of those who had died defending these same worlds. The dead had returned to reclaim what the living had lost, and their vengeance was terrible and complete. The Vorthak High Council met in emergency session in their capital city on Vorthak Prime. The 12 most powerful leaders of the Empire sat around a circular table made from rare crystal, their yellow eyes glowing with worry and anger. Reports were arriving every hour from across their territory, describing impossible attacks by enemies that could not be seen or touched. Chancellor Morthak was the oldest member of the High Council and had led the Empire for 40 years. He had never seen his fellow leaders looked so frightened. The mighty Vorthak, who had conquered entire star systems, were now jumping at shadows and refusing deployment orders to human. Space Admiral Morgoth stood before the council, his scales pale with stress as he delivered his report. The military commander, who had never lost a battle, was now forced to admit that his forces were retreating from every front. The humans had somehow gained an advantage that Vorthak science could not understand or counter. What began as isolated incidents on Kepler 442b has evolved into coordinated attacks across all occupied territories. Admiral Morgoth explained, his voice shaking with uncertainty. The human spirits appear simultaneously on multiple worlds, suggesting a communication network that spans dimensions our technology cannot detect. D'Arte Wusu quantum consciousness had indeed grown beyond anything the aliens could imagine. The elderly physicist now served as a central hub, connecting thousands of human ghosts across the galaxy. Each spirit retained their unique personality and skills while sharing a collective purpose, driving the invaders from human space through relentless terror. The network had become incredibly sophisticated, with different ghosts specializing in different types of psychological warfare. Dr. Yoon Hae-jin coordinated fear campaigns that exploited Vorthak cultural weaknesses, while former military officers like Admiral Lee Kwan-soo planned strategic operations that maximized confusion and panic on the mining world of Kepler 62e. The ghost of demolitions expert Bang Hyun-woo had turned the Vorthak occupation into a nightmare. Explosions occurred without any physical explosives being present. Mining equipment operated by invisible hands, digging tunnels that led nowhere and creating patterns that spelled out threatening messages. In ancient Vorthak, phantom explosions were perfectly real, causing actual damage to Vorthak facilities, but no physical bombs could be found at the blast sites. Alien engineers fled their posts as ghost voices whispered threats in their native language, using words and phrases that only family members should know. The valuable deuterium mines that were crucial to Vorthak fleet operations became completely unusable within a week. Workers reported seeing the transparent figures of dead human miners walking through the tunnels, carrying spectral tools and singing songs in languages the aliens had never heard. On the agricultural world of Glee 667cc, the spirit of Dr. Ru Sun-mi began manifesting phantom diseases among Vorthak troops. The former bioweapons researcher had died when aliens destroyed her laboratory, but her knowledge of biological warfare continued in her Ghostly form Vortex soldiers reported symptoms of illnesses that did not exist in any medical database. Their scanners detected viral infections that had no physical presence. Alien medics tried desperately to treat diseases that were purely psychological. But the symptoms were completely real, including fever, hallucinations, and paralysis entire. Vorthic medical facilities were overwhelmed with patients suffering from phantom plagues that spread through supernatural means rather than biological contact. The psychological impact proved as debilitating as any real disease, as healthy soldiers became terrified of catching impossible illnesses from invisible sources. Commander Kexhal of the Vorthek 12th Legion made his final log entry before abandoning his post on Tau Ceti Prime. His voice was barely a whisper as he described the complete breakdown of military discipline among his troops. Dead humans speak our language better than we do, Commander Kexhal recorded. They know our tactical formations, our supply routes, our personal fears from childhood. They whisper the names of our family members and describe our home cities in perfect detail. How do we fight an enemy that has had months to study us while remaining invisible? The Ghost Network had indeed spent considerable time learning about individual Vorthek soldiers. Dr. Choi Dongmin used his spectral hacking abilities to access personnel records and personal communications. The spirits learned the names of alien families, their fears and weaknesses, their military training and psychological profiles. Armed with this intimate knowledge, the human ghosts began targeting specific individuals with personalized terror campaigns. Vorthek soldiers would hear the voices of dead relatives calling their names from empty corridors. They would see phantom images of their home worlds burning while spectral children cried for help. Campaign reached its peak when every Vorthek facility in human space experienced simultaneous manifestations. Dr. Tae Woo had coordinated the largest ghostly operation in galactic history, involving thousands of human spirits acting in perfect synchronization across dozens of star systems at precisely 0000 Universal Standard Time. All lights went out across Vorthok-occupied worlds. The darkness was not caused by power failures but by supernatural forces that could manipulate electromagnetic energy. The aliens' emergency lighting systems also failed, leaving them in complete blackness in the darkness. Vorthok soldiers heard something that broke their collective sanity, the voices of every human they had killed speaking in perfect unison. The message was simple but absolutely terrifying: leave now or we will follow you home to your families and your children. The threat was not empty. The ghosts had learned to transcend physical limitations and follow Vorthek ships through hyperspace jumps. Human spirits appeared on vessels that were light years away from any human world. The dead had gained the ability to travel instantly across the galaxy. Vorthok crew members reported phantom figures walking through the corridors of their starships. Weeks after leaving human space, ghost voices spoke through internal communication systems, delivering messages that made seasoned warriors weep with fear. Equipment malfunctioned in patterns that spelled out words in ancient human languages. The psychological warfare extended beyond military targets to Vorthok civilian populations. Families on the home worlds began reporting visits from transparent human figures who stood silently in their homes, watching them with sad eyes that held infinite patience. The ghosts never attacked civilians, but their presence was a constant reminder that human vengeance was patient and eternal. Chancellor Moore Thack received reports that made him question everything he thought he knew about death and consciousness. Vorthok citizens were fleeing their homes rather than face nightly visits from human spirits who seemed to know intimate details about their lives. The economic impact was devastating as Vorthok industries ground to a halt. Workers refused to operate facilities that might be haunted by human ghost trade routes through former human space were abandoned completely as transport crews reported spectral passengers who appeared on ships without warning. Dr. Wu coordinated the final phase of the terror campaign by demonstrating the true reach of human ghostly power. Every Vorthok facility, military base, and civilian center across the Empire received simultaneous visits from human spirits. The message was clear: nowhere in the galaxy was safe from human vengeance. The dead had transcended every limitation that bound the living. They could appear anywhere instantly, travel through any barrier, and strike at enemies in ways that conventional military doctrine could not address. The Vorthic Empire faced the terrifying reality that they had made enemies of beings who had infinite time and infinite patience. Within hours of the final demonstration, Chancellor Morthak called an emergency session of the High Council. The unanimous decision was immediate and unprecedented in Vorthak history: complete withdrawal from all human territory and a formal declaration that human space was off limits to all Vorthak forces. The empire that had conquered 12 star systems without losing a single soldier was now retreating from an enemy they could not see, touch, or defeat. The hunters had become the hunted, and the terror they had inflicted on others was now visiting them with compound interest. 3 months after Dr. Tewu first appeared as a ghost on Kepler 442b, the Vorthic Empire made an announcement that shocked the entire galaxy. The reptilian conquerors, who had never retreated from any battle, were formally declaring complete withdrawal from all human space territories. The official Vorthic statement cited dimensional anomalies incompatible with Vorthic physiology, but every intelligent being in the galaxy understood the real truth. The seemingly unstoppable empire had been driven away by the spirits of their victims. The dead had accomplished what the living could not. General Kim Seung-ho stood in the rebuilt command center of New Seoul, watching celebration reports from liberated human colonies across dozens of star systems. The underground bunkers were no longer needed as Vorthok forces fled rather than face another encounter with human ghosts. The partnership between living humans and their ghostly protectors had evolved into something unprecedented in galactic history. Dr. Tewu's quantum network now served as an early warning system, with phantom scouts monitoring potential threats light years away from human worlds. Commander Yang Yun-su's spirit appeared regularly in the command center, providing intelligence that no living spy could gather. The ghost of the former naval officer could travel instantly to any location in the galaxy and observe enemy movements without risk of detection or capture. Dr. On Jae-sung's research team had documented over 3,000 confirmed ghost manifestations, each displaying abilities that seemed to violate fundamental laws of physics. Human consciousness had proven far more adaptable than anyone imagined, capable of evolution beyond the constraints of physical existence. The spirits of human engineers could manipulate technology through quantum fields, repairing damaged equipment or improving system efficiency in ways that living technicians could not match. Ghost scientists contributed to research projects by accessing information from dimensions that normal instruments could not detect. Park Ji-hoon's Phantom Fighter Wing had become a permanent part of human space defense. The spectral pilots could appear anywhere instantly, and their ghost ships confused enemy scanners while providing perfect reconnaissance data. The dead pilots retained all their flying skills while gaining supernatural abilities. But the new reality brought challenges as well as advantages. Some human spirits retained negative emotions from their deaths, creating problems that living humans had to manage. The ghost of Colonel Baek Jong-soo had become consumed with hatred against all alien species. Not just the Vorthak. Dr. Tewu had to use his central position in the quantum network to restrain vengeful spirits who wanted to attack innocent civilians. Colonel Baek Jong-soo's ghost had to be contained after his manifestations threatened mixed species colonies where humans lived peacefully alongside other aliens. The incident taught humanity that death did not automatically make people wise or good. Human ghosts retained all their personality flaws and prejudices from life. Some spirits became obsessed with past grievances or unable to accept that the war was over. General Kim Seung-ho established new protocols for communicating with ghost forces. Living human commanders learned to work with phantom officers while maintaining clear chains of command. The dead could provide invaluable intelligence and support, but they still needed guidance from the living. The galactic community watched humanity's transformation with emotions ranging from awe to terror. The Zephyrian Trade Federation sent diplomatic envoys offering technology exchanges and military alliances. They wanted to ensure good relations with a species that commanded armies of the dead. The crystalline hierarchy took the opposite approach, sealing their borders completely and refusing all contact with human space. The silicon-based life forms declared that humans had become something too dangerous to interact with. Their rigid, logical society could not cope with beings who transcended death. Other Species wondered if consciousness surviving bodily death was unique to humans or if they too might discover similar abilities. The implications were staggering. If death was not truly the end, then everything about galactic civilization would need to be reconsidered. Religious movements sprang up across dozens of worlds as alien species grappled with proof that consciousness could survive physical death. Some aliens began worshipping humans as divine beings, while others declared them abominations that violated natural law. Kepler 442b, where everything began, a memorial now stood in the laboratory where Dr. Tae-woo had died. The quantum physicist had become something between a saint and a general coordinator for thousands of human spirits. Living humans and ghosts gathered there annually to remember the man whose accidental discovery changed galactic history. Dr. Woo's consciousness still served as the central hub of the ghost network, but he had found peace in his new role. The elderly scientist had always wanted his research to help humanity, and death had given him the ability to protect his species in ways he never imagined possible. Memorial ceremony each year brought together families of the living and spirits of the dead in a gathering that would have been impossible before the quantum transformation. Children spoke with the ghosts of grandparents who had died in the war, while parents received comfort from phantom soldiers who had given their lives for human freedom. The Vorthic Empire, meanwhile, contracted its borders and focused entirely on defending core worlds. Their military doctrine was completely rewritten to avoid conflicts with any species that might possess post-mortem combat capabilities. The reptilian conquerors who once inspired fear across the galaxy now jumped at Shadow's admiral. Morgoth was forced into early retirement after his forces fled from human space. His replacement admiral, Kexthor, established new policies that required extensive research into alien death rituals before any military campaign. The empire that had conquered through superior technology now lived in constant fear of supernatural retaliation. Vorthic society developed an obsession with avoiding death at all costs. They invested enormous resources in life extension technology and medical research, while their military became increasingly defensive. The warriors who had once glorified combat now viewed every battle as a potential source of vengeful ghosts. The psychological impact extended to Vorthic civilian populations who reported phantom sightings even on worlds that had never seen human presence. The collective trauma of their military's defeat had created a cultural paranoia about the dead that would persist for generations as humanity rebuilt and expanded into the galaxy. They carried with them the ultimate deterrent any species considering aggression against human worlds would have to face, not just living defenders, but the accumulated spirits of every human who had ever died fighting for their people's freedom. The Ghost Network evolved into a permanent institution, with Dr. Tae-woo serving as eternal commander-in-chief of humanity's supernatural forces. New spirits joined the network as humans died natural deaths, choosing to continue serving their species rather than moving on to whatever lay beyond. Human space exploration took on new dimensions as phantom scouts could instantly survey distant worlds and report on conditions without the risks and delays of physical travel. The dead became humanity's advance guard, pushing the boundaries of known space, while living colonists followed safely behind. Trade negotiations with other species often included clauses acknowledging the presence of human ghosts and